Hello, welcome, salam, shalom, namaste, sasrikal, aloha, hola, ciao, bonjour, buna, and privyet. It's really, really good to be with you again. And you know what? I'm really, really happy that you're joining us today because we're going to have such a fabulous time. We have our returning guest today, which is really cool, because all of our returning guests are extra special. We have so much fun talking the first time. You have to bring them back. So I'm really excited to have you back with us, Dorinda, today. And by the way, for those of you listening, in case you missed our first episode with Dorinda Barker is a relationship coach and an online dating expert. And last time we spoke about dating and relationships. Among other things, we talked about conversations that you should always have with each other when you are getting into a relationship. So it's very, very important. And today we're going to be focusing on something just a little bit different, related to relationships. But before we get into that, Dorinda, welcome again. And please tell us a little more again about who you are and what you do for those people who missed the first time.
Oh, yeah, sure. My name is Dorinda Barker, and I'm a relationship coach from self-love to solo and everything in between. So what I do is I basically, if you're coming to me, that means you are ready to meet your person and you're wanting to find the right person for you. It's not about finding the sexiest person, the richest person. I mean, all those things are fantastic and great. You can have all those things if you want those things. But what you're looking for is a substantial person, your person that you're going to be with for, for your time here on this earth. And this is what I do and with helping everybody. And so with all of that, I help with online dating, red flags, self-love, everything like that, because you need all of that. It's like baking a cake, right? You need all of those ingredients to put you on your way to finding your person.
Oh, I love that. I love how holistically you approach uh, this whole issue of finding the person and what it takes to be in a healthy,
Yeah.
happy relationship. That is so, so important. And you mentioned red flags, helping people recognize red flags. I think that for me is an extremely important topic because when we're talking about the ability to create healthy and happy relationships, it's impossible to do if you are not able to recognize the red flags.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing with red flags, and not to jump in so quickly, but I am a little bit, is red flags are there in the beginning.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, you're so right. You're so right. And that's why, it's so important to be educated about them because
Yeah.
otherwise, by the time you begin to realize or get to that point where you're like, okay, there's something definitely wrong and I want to do something about it, you might be in it too deep already. And then it becomes way more challenging to get yourself out. When I say too deep, I don't mean that it's too late to get out. It's just that it becomes way more difficult to get out or to take corrective action.
Oh, yeah, because emotions are now involved. And when you get emotions involved, the heart involved, and you, it's so much harder.
Yeah.
So, and I'm a person who believes you need both the heart and the head to
Mm.
be in a relationship. But also the fact is we as people want to have our heart rule us when it comes to relationships.
That's actually very interesting that you said that. I don't think this will take us off on too much of a tangent. Um, but just to clarify definitions, I suppose, because I talk a lot about our heart and listening to our heart, and I recognize that different people use that language differently. So when
Yeah.
you talk about the heart as opposed to the head, what are you talking about?
When I talk about the heart as opposed to the head is we should always lead with our heart when it comes to love, but
Mhm.
we should not forget about the feeling. We should not forget about looking and acknowledging the red. And this is perfect with red flags, right? We need to look and acknowledge what's going on in our relationship.
Mhm.
And what happens is the heart is beautiful and irrational. And also at the same time, it wants to give all its energy to somebody.
Mm.
And that's beautiful, right? Because we all want that. We all want that.
Yeah.
But what happens is if we haven't done the work on ourselves,
Mm.
then just jump into relationships. Like people who jump into relationship to relationship to relationship, right? And there's like no stop, like you're not taking a break.
Mm.
Those people, if someone told you, how long was your last relationship? Oh, my last relationship was 3 years. Oh, okay. So when were you out of your last relationship? Oh, just 3 months ago, but I'm fine. And then they jump into another relationship
Mm.
right there. I'm not saying everybody's like that, by the way, but I see it a lot. I see it a lot with people. And that is a red flag to
Mm.
jump in totally into a relationship. And 3 weeks later, they're in this relationship and it's a committed relationship, but they didn't work on what was not working in the last relationship that
Mm.
you would be able to go, okay, this is what I want in a relationship. Instead,
Yeah.
they just want to be in a relationship. So they're not using their head for the thinking part of it
Mm.
because you can use your head and your heart together. I think I had mentioned that in the beginning.
Yeah.
You can use both.
Yes.
And they should work together.
Right.
Your head and heart should always work together. And if they do work together, they're always working in your favor.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So just in terms of my language, what I'm hearing you say,
Yes.
like oftentimes when I'm talking about the heart, I'm talking about the spiritual heart. And I think what you are talking about, from what I'm understanding, in my language, I call that the emotional heart. So
Yes.
you are referring to the emotional heart. Okay, so awesome. I'm so glad that I checked in with you about that. And so when we're talking about the emotional heart, one thing that I have come to really appreciate about our emotional heart is that actually even our emotional heart has a lot of wisdom. Like every
Yes.
feeling that it's feeling, there's a good reason for why it's feeling those feelings,
Yes.
right? And it's just that I think sometimes we are not able to understand why we are feeling what we're feeling, and especially when what we are feeling is complex. It's not like we're
Yes.
just feeling one simple thing. There's like all these different needs that we have, and each of those needs is producing a feeling, and the overall feeling that you then feel is like a complex feeling. And so then
Yep.
it's so easy to get confused about what am I actually feeling and why am I feeling it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like there's a part of you that is feeling something because of which you want to jump right back into another relationship. But
Yeah.
there's other parts of you that are feeling other things that maybe you're not looking at or not understanding. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers. The Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Yes. And that's the other thing. And when you talk about the spiritual heart is fantastic too, because that's huge. I mean, we as people, we can choose not to believe in, I believe in a higher power. And
Mm,
I know that you do too, Smia. And that is a huge thing too, because if your hearts are not spiritually aligned, won't work. And that's also a red flag too. And I'm not saying
mm,
that's a red flag all over the place, like violence or anything. It's a red flag for you
right,
because spiritually, we have to be aligned. It is
right.
huge. I think it's one of the biggest things for people in a relationship is to be spiritually aligned. Because if not, down the line, most likely the relationship will not work. If you or you need to talk about those things and have open communication about your spiritual heart.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it's a recipe for a disaster. It's a recipe for a souffle that's going to fall flat.
Right. Yes, I can totally see that happening. And I've seen that happening with so many couples that I know. My gosh. Okay. All right. So before we get too much talking about the spiritual heart, I would love to go back to the earlier red flag, the other red flag that you mentioned
Yes.
about people jumping too quickly into a new relationship
Yep.
without having done the work. So I realized when you were talking about that being a red flag, that's actually a red flag for the new person I'm getting into a relationship with if I'm the one that is jumping too quickly into a new relationship.
Yeah.
But also I can use that as a red flag for myself and be like, wait a minute, am I jumping into another relationship just way too quickly?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
as it's one of those things. There's red flags on on both parts.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Cool. Okay, so if I am the one who noticed, like if I'm the one who's jumping into the relationship too quickly and I notice this red flag about myself, what do I do? And then if you could contrast that with if the person I want to jump into a relationship with too quickly notices it, what should they do?
Okay, so for the person, we'll start with the person jumping into the relationship, going from relationship to relationship. Um, and I have a few friends like that who I've talked to. So like what I always say is take the time,
Mm,
take the time, take the time to see why that relationship did not work. Take the time to see what you really want in a relationship.
yeah,
Take the time to find out about you
right.
before you jump into something else. Go out with your friends, have, I mean, adult sleepovers, you know what I mean? I just had one about a month ago and it was amazing. And it was just all, my friends and we watched The Tinder Swindler and had a sleepover. Like it was the best. I think more people need to start doing these, as adults. And, but invest in yourself instead of investing in someone else. And I'm not saying you have to do it forever, but give it a little time
Yeah.
for, and also know that it's okay to be in a relationship with yourself for
Yeah.
a minute.
Mm. So how do you know when you have done enough of spending time with yourself, or like that you have gotten to a point where you're now ready to be in a relationship or with someone else?
I mean, I think that's up to everybody. I
Mm.
mean, it's different for everyone, to be honest with you. It
Yeah,
really is. I
yeah.
mean, I say give yourself, you know, they said the old adage is half of the time of the relationship that you were in.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
some people say. But then
Uh-huh.
again, I have people I know are getting out of relationships of 25 years,
Right.
because they're in their 50s. And I'm like,
Yes.
I'm not going to tell them that. I would say, for people who are getting out of like long-term
Yeah.
relationships of like 20 years, 10 years, and that, I would say give it about a year to 2 years of
Mm-hmm.
just figuring yourself out, because at that time, at this point, you and that other person have melded together as two, and your relationship didn't work. It happens, unfortunately, sometimes, but you need to take that time to find out who you are
Yeah.
and who, let's say Tom, we're just going to throw Tom out, who Tom wants to be,
Right.
you know, who does, who does Tina want to be? Like, I'm just throwing names out, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's like,
Yeah.
who do you want to be now? Because this is the
Right.
perfect time to even reinvent yourself if you want to
Yeah.
reinvent yourself. So, but once again, relationships, I think I might have mentioned this before, in our other talk, are with relationships, just like anything else, it's comfort. And
Right.
people like the comfort of being in a relationship and the stability that relationships have.
Yeah.
And yes, I love that. Don't get me wrong. I truly love all of that. But also the fact is you can't have all of that stuff, and what you're bringing in is the other person still to
Right.
that relationship if you haven't taken your time to
Mm.
deal with your stuff. Now, for people under, 5 years and under, I mean, listen, it's wherever you feel right. It's, 3 to 6 months, wherever your heart feels right. But
Mm.
as long as you've taken some time out and done some work
Yeah.
for yourself and you've asked yourself the hard questions,
Mm.
the questions that go, okay, I am now ready. I've done my deep dive into myself. I've done my therapy, if you decide to do therapy, because I'm a huge advocate for therapy, or, come and, do a self-love course with me or anything like that, or even just go to a relationship coach who deals with all of this stuff too. Going to a relationship coach, you can go to a relationship coach going, where did I go wrong? And you can go to a relationship coach for that. And so you can get yourself ready to get back out into this world to be with your person, to find your person, to
Yeah.
connect with your person. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And so like for me, I'm thinking like an indication for me that I'm ready to jump into another relationship is that I have to be feeling okay with me. I have to be feeling like um when I spend time with myself, I'm cool
Yeah.
and I love myself. And I feel confident being myself and by myself. And
Yeah.
so if I'm feeling that, then I'm ready to be in a relationship
Yes,
myself.
yes, 100%. You are so right on that. You are
Thank you.
so, yes, I couldn't have said it better, actually.
Hey, I just repeated what I heard you say. Cool.
But, and also for people who are getting into relationships with people who go from relationship to relationship to relationship, they call it serial monogamy. I think that's what it is called. Um, but the ask yourself, what is it about this person that you will throw, what is it? You throw caution to the wind. Right. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the saying. You throw caution to the wind and you're willing to do this. Are you okay with um, knowing that this is how this relationship is starting from them being coming out of one relationship going into another relationship
Right.
and not knowing whether or not ask the hard questions. Have you healed your heart?
Mm,
Have you done the work to know, hey, this is over, but are you ready to be in another relationship? Are you ready to
mm,
take on and be with and take someone else's heart and meld with someone else's heart?
yeah. Yeah.
Because that's really important.
Mm,
And what is it that makes you go, okay, I'm willing to do all of this, and it doesn't matter that they just were with someone else.
yeah. Yeah. My gosh. This is, one of, I think, the most important
Yeah.
things, like when I'm talking to friends, because, unfortunately in my culture, and right now I'm thinking about my Indian Pakistani culture, the
Mhm.
traditional side of our culture, there is such a huge value placed on marriage. And
Yeah.
there's still so much of a stigma around being single that honestly, single people in my community are oftentimes subjected to intense pressure from everyone around them, friends, family, like the people they love the most, strangers.
Mhm.
Everywhere you go, people are like, why aren't you married? When are you going to get married? And you're being pushed into it, whether you are ready or not. Like, even if, for example, I realize I'm not ready, everyone around me will be pushing me. Like, even the people who love me, my closest family, friends, they'll be pushing me to get married because in the mindset, this particular mindset, it's just inconceivable to be happy and to be living a full life if you're not married. Not to mention all the anxiety, especially around for women in terms of their security, financial security and other forms of security. Because it's like, if you're not married, you're not secure, and so
Yes.
there's just so much fear around that, and that there's so much pressure. And I'm like, like if you watch Indian movies and dramas, by the way, this is a constant theme. So like on the one hand, like the girl is getting pressured, get married, get married, get married. She's not ready. She knows she's not ready, but she's getting pressured. She feels like she can't say no. Then on the other side, the boy that is brought in to marry this girl who's totally not ready to get married is like, why is he saying yes? Even like we have all these movies where this team, where the girl will tell the boy, I'm not ready. Please, can you say no? Because I can't say no. And in half the movies, because, they want to create drama, the boy will be like, no, 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 I think we can make it work. I love us enough, love you enough for both of us, and blah, blah, blah. And, the like, and then they end up in a relationship and it's just like a total disaster. I'm like, okay, it's fine if you're watching this in a movie because the movie is there to, create drama, but let's not make this happen in real life.
Yeah, in life is not a movie. Let's be honest, right? Anyone who
Yeah.
looks at relationships as being like a movie, that is a red flag if I've ever seen. Like it's
Oh,
like
mm,
blinking red flag, and
yes.
it's not. I love the romanticism
Mhm,
of, rom-coms and love stories and all of those things. Like my
mhm,
favorite movie is When Harry Met Sally. Like favorite movie. Also says a lot about me. But the thing is we can't romanticize certain things. So like in your
yeah.
culture, and if I am speaking out of term, please stop me. Because once again, I am not of your culture. But my question to you is, So you are an independent woman doing your own thing, doing everything, um, you want to do in, where what you are doing, like doing this podcast. There's so many things that you are doing. Now, when it comes to relationships and getting married, how does, because I know it's deep in the culture, how do you go about doing that? Because you don't seem like you're someone who's ready to take that step in life. Like it's not right now for you. And if that ever came up for you, how would you go about doing that? I'm very interested
Yes.
in all of this.
Yeah. So actually, interestingly, my situation is somewhat different. So there's two things that set me apart. Number one, I'm not even now leading a very traditional lifestyle, right? Because
Mm.
as you mentioned, I am actually living a very independent lifestyle. Me, Samia Bano, is leading a very independent lifestyle. I actually have a career that I'm very focused on, and I have had this time and the space and the support from my family and so forth to be able to do that. Whereas if I was leading a very traditional lifestyle, I wouldn't have a career. It's like women who are leading a traditional lifestyle in my culture, it's all about what's going on in the family, right? And so it's like before you're married, you're taking care of your family where you've been born and raised. And then the goal is as soon as possible, get you married off and then you move into your husband's family. And then it's all about taking care of things over there at your husband's family and stuff. And that's the big transition that happens. And so as long as that transition hasn't happened, people are very nervous because there's also and there's a lot of stress and anxiety to make sure that transition happens, because there's also all of these stereotypes, and it's not just a stereotype but an actual fear that pans out in, again, the traditional context where the older especially a girl gets, like people are not so concerned about a man's age, but the older a girl gets, it's like, oh, you're not going to find a good match. You may not even find a match after a certain point in time, you know? And so there's like all of this anxiety and fear because so much of the girl's security, her ability to lead a good life, it's like who's going to take care of her because she's not financially independent,
Yeah.
is tied up with getting married, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm your father, I love you, but I'm going to pass away, and I can't be with you forever, so you need your husband to be there for you forever, kind of a thing. So that's one thing. Like for me, I've broken the traditional mold there. But then the second thing is that I think because now I'm living in America, I am living in a very different context than when I was living back in India and Pakistan, right? And so here in America, not only have I had more actual opportunities open up to me, like for example, being able to go to college, being taught in college about career planning and taking classes in college where, my professors and so forth encouraged me to create a vision for my life and dream dreams about, what kind of work I want to do. Like I would not have experienced any of that if I was still living in India, Pakistan, right? So there's that. But then, the fact that I also became the happiness expert that I am, right? And for me, that meant going through a lot of training and development, like self-development. And I learned to set boundaries and, like, so I can actually say no now. And it's like, I still have people, actually, it's not so much happening to me anymore because I've just done this for so long, so consistently that pretty much everyone who knows me closely has stopped talking to me about when are you going to get married, because when they used to do it, I just very firmly put a stop to the conversation, in various ways. Um, and now if someone brings it up, it doesn't even bother me. It used to really bother me. But now it doesn't even bother me. I just smile and I'm like, yes, inshallah. That's a phrase that we use that just means if God wills. So I don't even like get into arguments about I don't want to get married or not now or whatever. I just say, if God wills, when God wills, whenever the time is right, by God's will, it will
Yeah.
happen, and I'm not just saying that, that is really my attitude internally and my feeling internally, and so I feel so calm and relaxed, and I just am able to communicate from that calm and relaxed place and maintain that calm and relaxed energy with anyone who still decides to bring this up with me. And so we just get over it pretty quickly and move on with life. So I'm doing things pretty differently than what a lot of other women, especially in my culture, are experiencing.
And that's amazing. And you're living your life, which is great. Because I know in, certain cultures, and as you were saying in your culture, certain things are already planned out for you.
Mhm.
So, I mean, even a red flag, it doesn't even matter if there's a red flag in certain ways, because your life is, but I love that you've chosen yourself. And as you said, God wills, if God wills, God wills.
Yeah, yeah. And like for me, a lot of that um, just goes back to my experiences, in terms of being a survivor of child sexual abuse. Like literally, I was so traumatized by the very thought of being in a romantic sexual relationship. It used to make me feel sick to even think about it. So, for a long time when I was in that part of my journey of dealing with the trauma, I like I used to just run away literally and hide anytime someone would bring up this topic because I couldn't deal with it at all. And then when I was progressing through my healing journey and I could bear to listen and stay in the room while people were talking about it, like I mentioned, I had to deal with a lot of anxiety and stress and anger, uh, you know, in that context. And a lot of that came out and in my communications with people, and that made people worried about me. And rightly so,
Yeah.
especially my friends and family. And so it took a while to sort of learn to deal with that, first of all, within myself, and then in the context of my relationships and how I was communicating about the issue with the people that I loved and cared about. So it was this whole process, and then and now I am where I am. So it's just continuing to grow.
Thank you for sharing that because those are personal things that not a lot of people like to talk about.
Mhm.
And I appreciate you for opening up and feeling comfortable enough to talk to me and tell me that something like that. Because I can't tell you how many people won't talk about what you just talked about.
Right. Right. And I think, I feel so grateful to be at a place in my healing where I can talk about it. And I love to take the opportunity to talk about it in an appropriate context, of course,
Yeah.
like we have developed right now, because precisely I know that so many people are unable to talk about it. And I know, different survivors have different journeys. There are so many survivors that I know who have experience sexual assault, sexual abuse, and then they are um, uh, now in healthy, happy relationships, and they did
Yeah.
it in a timeline that's way shorter than the timeline that I'm going through, you know, and that's totally fine too. That's awesome for
Yeah.
those people. Yeah.
Yeah. And your life is built on your timeline.
Yes.
It's no one else's timeline. It is no one else can tell you how fast or how long
Yeah.
something is going to take because it is your life. You are the designer of your life. And if something takes you a little longer, then so be it. No one can tell you anything else. You becoming healthy, you becoming a happiness coach, you doing all of these things. I mean, it's your life. And the fact that you're doing that and doing all of this is amazing. Amazing. And that's probably more than some of your other friends are doing. And that's great. They're living their own life. That's their life. But this is your life.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, this is again in terms of like red flags, I suppose, just going back
Okay.
to this idea. So for someone who's jumping from relationship to relationship very quickly, if you are on the receiving end of that person trying to do that to you, like you were saying, um, so in terms of, again, being aware of red flags, so there's the fact that they're jumping into quickly,
Hmm.
uh, or seemingly too quickly, because we can't judge for other people what's too quick and too slow. But
Yeah.
for like, I don't know, have like I suppose, what are some, okay, so we have actually talked a little bit already about what are some things. So there's the time, the actual time, but then
Yeah.
there's
There's the, yeah.
what else is there that that I could like, so if I'm trying to look for the red flag and make sure the other person's not jumping in too quickly, what else can I be looking out for?
So we talked about, asking the questions,
Yes.
asking the serious questions,
Right.
but also asking the question to yourself, how comfortable are you
Yes.
how comfortable are you getting into a relationship with someone who
Mm,
hasn't taken that time
right.
to mourn that other relationship, right?
Right.
So, and that's the question you have to ask yourself
Right.
because you still, before the emotions and before everything gets, and once again, it could be beautiful, it could be great, it could be all of those things, but also ask yourself, are you willing to take that jump and know that there is a good chance that this is going to end up how him or her or they, however that relationship
Right.
ended. And it
Yeah.
goes back to my mama and my mom talked about this to me is because there was back, I mean, this is back in the day when I was like in high school or something. And my mom was talking about someone we knew
Yeah.
who got into a relationship with a woman who was in another relationship and then jumped into a relationship with him. And she said to me, and that's when she turned around and looked at me, and I was in high school, probably like a sophomore, I think at the time, and she goes, I'm going to tell you something. However you get into however this relationship starts is how this relationship ends.
Mm,
So, but if you're okay with that, then this is how it will be. Just like, red flag, I'll go into another red
right.
flag
Yes,
because
please.
it segues into
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I'm going to go into.
Yeah.
When someone tells you that this is just casual,
Yeah.
take it as this is just casual.
Mm,
And if you
believe
are
what they
looking for
say.
yeah. And if you are looking for a long-term relationship and you are and you are in this world for your person, that person right there. is going not to be your person. I mean, very minuscule of a time, but
Mm.
the thing is because you're getting into something where that person wants it to be casual. That
Yeah.
relationship will end as it started. So to bring
Mm.
in this whole, oh, I'm going to make that person fall in love with me. Oh, that's a red flag right there for you. That's your red flag because you are not going to make someone fall in love with you. That's not, especially when someone says, I want it casual. If that person's calling you at 2:30 in the morning or 1 in the morning, anytime after, let's be honest, anything after 11 p.m. or 10 p.m.,
Yeah.
they're calling for a reason. You know what I mean? And it's not to play tiddlywinks, and it's there, or they don't call you, like there's no back and forth of communication, and the
Mm.
only communication you're getting is every so often, and it's when they're feeling a certain way. And you to be with someone, your person, and you're rightfully so person, those things are never going to come up, because you want to know why? Those things are never going to be there, because they're always going to keep open communication. They're
Mm.
always going to make sure you're okay. They're always going to protect your heart. But if someone is not protecting you and protecting your heart, then they're not your person. And red flags of, and this is a red flag if you cannot handle it, because I believe in open communication.
Mm-hmm.
But if the other person is saying, I don't want to be serious, I'm dating other people, that could be a red flag for you. For
Yeah.
you, that could be a red flag, but you still go in willingly. I can tell you, she, they will keep dating other people because you haven't said it wasn't okay,
Right.
And so these are all the things. You even have the way the person speaks to you.
Yeah.
If they speak to you in a way where they speak down to you,
Mm.
or, shove you off, the verbal shove you off,
Right.
not physical shove you off. But those are red flags right there. And pay
Yeah.
attention to them. And when
Yeah.
you're paying attention to them, that's growth for
Yeah.
you as a person.
Right.
If you're not paying attention to them and this is happening, then you really need to pay attention once again to yourself to see where you need to grow and where you need help.
Mm.
Because we all should have boundaries. We all should think of ourselves as one of the most important people in our own lives. Actually, you are the most important person in your own life. It's like when you're on an airplane and they're telling you they're giving you the safety instructions, and they say, the oxygen mask, you put it on yourself first to
Yeah.
help before you can help anyone else, because you have to help yourself before you can help anybody else. So that is something to look into too. But I mean, if, let's say, another red flag, if someone makes a date with you, if that person makes it, or you're supposed to have we'll say the person who makes a date, if that person does not call you within 24 hours of that date, and just to do a check-in to say, hey, we're still on for tomorrow, or even if then that's a red flag.
Interesting.
It's a
Mhm.
red flag, because we live in a world that's so fast, right? So
Yeah.
we should, automatically think, okay, this date is going to happen, and he's picking me up at 4 o'clock. She's picking me up, or they picking me up at 4 o'clock. But in today's day and age, if you made the date within days before, there
Mm.
should be that reminder of, hey, picking you up at 4 o'clock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they know that it is now set in stone. We're
Mm.
going out, and that person's not worrying throughout the whole day if whether or not this is going to happen. They
Mm.
know that this date is happening. They know that, okay, that's off my, but red flags of that. Red flags are you are talking to someone and or texting with someone and they don't, you know, just the way they even speak to you of how they speak about themselves and how they speak about you to
Yeah.
you. It's real. All of these things are so important.
Yeah. Can you give an example of what someone might say to you about themselves or about you that if I hear that, I'm like, oh, red flag, possible red flag.
Oh yeah, it's something just popped up in my I won't use that one. That's a little too graphic, but it's because there's cuss words in it. That was one of the reasons. But if somebody is honestly like if they're talking to you and putting you down,
Mm,
like if someone is saying to you, this is great. I love dating you. I think everything is wonderful. But you know what? You just lost a few pounds. Maybe we
mm,
could, things would be better. And maybe and it's manipulating too, the situation. Um, or, you know, maybe, did you ever think of maybe, God, I just had it, but did you ever think that you should eat that? Like, or should you have that next drink or should you, it's just more of, or they'll say, you shouldn't have said that. I think that, you could have, you didn't need to say that, even though they're gaslighting you in a way of you're giving your honest opinion on something. Let's say I'm saying that the sky is blue, right? And they're
mm,
like, no, it's green. And you're like, no, it's blue. And they're, no, it's green. And you shouldn't have said that it's blue. Why did you say that it was blue? And
mm,
it's those things, those words that hit, right? And
mhm.
then you start thinking, well, maybe they're right. Maybe the sky is green, you know? And they're trying to convince you, you know, of that's a certain red flag. I know I went into a tangent about that, but there's so many different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, red flags when they only want to be with you and try to alienate you away from
Uh,
people.
mhm. Yes. Yes. Oh, that is a very interesting red flag to talk about because I know a lot of times when that is happening, the way that, so for example, when I was going through my crisis counselor training on a domestic violence hotline, this was one of the red flags we learned about. And oftentimes, the response you get to this person, mm, uh, like when someone is like, oh, I just want to be with you all the time. And if you try to go spend time with your other friends or family and they're like acting all jealous, oftentimes the response to justify that in your mind and maybe in other people's minds who are watching the situation is, oh, that person just loves you so much. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with, so they don't recognize that as a red flag or as something that may be potentially wrong because the thinking is, oh, they just love you so much and that's why they just want to be with you all the time. And so it's actually romantic. It's actually a good thing. But so
Yeah.
can you explain a little bit why that is a red flag?
Well, because those tendencies, um, on how can I say that without, I'm just going to be honest. Okay. Those tendencies, a lot of times there's darkness behind it.
Mm,
So what they want to do is rule you, rule your world, rule who you are. And it's abusive in its own way. Um, and they want you for themselves.
mhm,
So when people do all of, these things, They're doing it so they can control you. It's all about control.
Yeah.
And yes, so when it comes down to it, in those relationships, down to even why did you wear that color today?
Hmm.
It's all about control.
Right. Right. Yeah. And if you think about it, in truly healthy relationships, like there's no one person, I don't care who that person is, no one person can play every role and fulfill every need that you have in
No.
the context of relationships, you know? Um, and that's why we have so many different kinds of relationships, and we need to have so many different kinds of relationships in your life. And so if there's someone who is like, no, you only get to be with me, and anything you want, anything you need, you have to do with me, and you
Yeah.
only get to do it with me, there's something really wrong with that, both for
Yeah.
that person and for you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you have to look within yourself too. I mean, and most people when they're there, they don't do it. I mean, they're so far in
Yeah.
that they don't. But when the strength comes, you get to look and say, no, that's not true. None of this is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? Darn it, the sky is blue. It goes back to having your own thoughts, your own way of life. Look, I mean, honestly, when it comes to red flags, there's so many things.
Mhm.
They show up in the beginning.
Yeah.
They honestly show up in the beginning of how they speak to people. Watch how someone speaks to
Yeah.
somebody,
And
you
not just
know?
to you, but to people in general.
Oh yeah. Because I was in the restaurant industry for a long time, in the bar industry,
Yeah.
I always look at how the person I'm with treats the people that work in a restaurant.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, there's been plenty of people men who have been out on dates with that I have not dated again.
Yeah.
And nor would I ever speak to them again by the way they treated their server or the bartender,
Yeah.
because that to me is, if you cannot treat, because we're all on the same level, just
Right.
because you make more money,
Yeah.
that's fine. But you don't treat someone because they make less money than you
Yeah.
and they're doing a job that you think is demeaning, which is funny. In LA, you were probably doing that job 3 years ago, but there's no hierarchy there.
Right. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's I mean, I guess it comes down to values again, because if you
Yeah.
yourself have an arrogance about your class status, for example, if you yourself think that you're better than other people because you make more money and you treat other people who make less than you like shit, then you won't mind someone that you're dating treating other people like shit, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but if those kinds of things matter to you, where you believe in equality, you believe in treating everyone with respect, then for sure that's a very important thing to look for in the person that you want to be in a relationship with.
Yeah. And it's all of these things. I'm actually looking something up right now. That's why I looked off screen. I am looking something up right now because I feel like I forgot something, and when you feel like you forget something, and I
Yeah.
want to make sure
Yeah.
that especially with red flags, I do not want to forget anything because they're so important, and
Yes.
especially people to notice. And so we talked about psychological abuse. We talked
Yes.
about that.
Yeah.
Physical abuse, well, right there. I mean, I don't think I need to go much farther with
Yeah.
physical abuse,
Right.
but physical abuse really comes after the gaslighting,
Mm-hmm.
after the
That's true.
first time he throws or she throws a phone
Yeah.
across the room. Things escalate. I'm not
Right.
saying everybody, listen, we in the heat of a moment, I'm not saying it has happened to me, but or breaking a plate, emotions get into it. But if it happens a lot, it normally escalates into something. Those are true, total, red flags. We
Yeah.
talked about gaslighting. Oh, I think I talked about everything. I think I'm very excited. I wanted to see my notes because, you know, it's manipulation. That's the
Yeah.
other thing we talked about, manipulation and lack of trust.
Yeah.
So that, and we didn't really talk about lack of trust, but lack of trust is another thing
Mm,
with in relationships. So in gaslighting and red flags, if you do not trust how someone is and who they are, and you do not trust any of that, that is a red flag
right.
because they went out for a night with the boys, right?
Yeah.
Go out for a night with the boys, and now you're sitting home stewing that he's out doing this or, she's out doing this. It, I don't know. They could be talking about unicorns. We don't know that. But that trust, you have to have that trust.
Yeah.
And you have to look into that too for yourself of like, where is that
Yeah.
lack of trust come from?
Yes.
And for the person who's in that relationship on the opposite end, why are you okay with that lack of trust?
Yeah.
Where for you feeds you? But
Right.
you have to look at all of those things. In beginning of relationships, they're always there. They
Yeah.
are always there. Just because someone's on their best behavior doesn't mean at some point they let something slip to let you know
Mm,
that something was happening.
right. Yeah. And I think, this idea of people are at their best behavior, especially in the beginning of a relationship, I think that's something for us to keep in mind. I mean, obviously, of course, we want to put our best foot forward,
Oh
and
yeah.
especially in the beginning. So that's very normal and natural. And at the same time, I think there is a difference between putting our best foot forward, which is still our foot, uh,
Yes.
and
Oh
being
yes.
inauthentic, and
Yeah.
being false about who you actually are. So I think sometimes that can seem like a fine line, um, you know, but it's if it is a fine line, then it's an important line to be aware
Yes.
of. Yeah,
Yes. And don't get into a relationship just for the sake of getting into a relationship
right.
because there's someone out there for you.
Mm,
There's someone's because we live in this world where way too many people in this world that let's say if a partner passes or if a relationship doesn't work out, that there's not another person out there for
mm,
you. And I want people to know that because I think generations before us got stuck on that one
yeah,
person. Um, there's billions of us on this planet. But do I think, is there a person for you? Yes. Is there a person for you for your eternity of life? Yes. But if that person leaves you, there's still another person out there for you
yeah,
that fits what you are looking for,
mm,
that fits your heart, that fits into that fits into the whole pocket of your life, not a small pocket of your life. And in what you're looking for and what your needs are.
yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I'm so
You're
glad you
welcome.
share that perspective because I do too. And um, the, it's just like for me, from a spiritual perspective, thinking about the issue of having partners. I mean, I think having a romantic relationship, honestly, of course, in some ways, it's a very special relationship, but it's also a relationship,
Yeah.
and the fundamentals of how you create and maintain any healthy relationship are ultimately the same.
Yeah.
And, from a spiritual perspective, one of our missions is to learn to love everyone, and so
Yes.
for sure, I believe that we have the capacity, at least, we have that potential, at least, to love anyone and everyone. It's just that there has to be a willingness on both sides, and you have to be matching
Yeah.
in that moment of time in terms of your levels of growth and your values that you're living by at that time, and so on and so forth. And so sometimes when we're not able to get along with someone at a particular time, it's not because it's impossible or that they are wrong in any absolute kind of way for us. It's just that at that point in time, things are not lining up for us, you know?
Yeah. I know so many people that were at some point either they had met at one point and it didn't work out. That's true.
Right.
I do believe like there are moments like that. And then 30 years later, they meet up and it is their moment. I
Mm-hmm.
actually know a few people like that.
Yeah, it
But
worked out that
it,
way for Harry and Sally, right?
oh, it did. It did. There you go. It did work out like that for Harry when Harry met Sally. But it is this whole, you have to know that within yourself, don't rush it.
Yeah.
Don't rush it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we in this world rush it. Like if you're going to be with someone like forever, right? Like your forever person, your person, a long time. Why does it need to start tomorrow?
Mm.
Find out if this is your forever person.
Yeah.
Find out if that person is the right person.
Yeah.
Find out. I just think sometimes people pick because of age, because of where they are in their life,
Yeah.
because of they're lonely,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
instead of just really figuring out if if this person is for them.
Yeah. You know that what you just shared reminds me of one of my mentors uh who who talks about who's now in a relationship that with a woman that he loves, adores. He's like, she is my person, my forever person. And he also shares a story about how he met her. And he said, the thing is that I met her when I was ready to meet her. Meaning that if I had
Yes.
actually met her, even like a few years prior to when I met her, I could not have been in this happy, healthy relationship with her that I am now because I was a different person. I had to learn and grow and become the person that I am in order to be in the relationship, happy, healthy relationship that we are in now. And if I had met
Yep.
her anytime prior to my being in that right stage of growth and development for me, I even if I had gotten into a relationship with her, I would have messed it up, And so he recognizes that about his relationship. And I just think that's such a beautiful lesson that he has shared, certainly with me and his other people that, he mentors and stuff. Um, and that's how I'm thinking that, it's like, when I was saying that this just might not be the right time, uh,
Yeah.
in terms of why a relationship's not working out for you with a particular person, even though that potential is that capacity is there. So don't, but if right now is not the right time, then it's all right. Like, just I'm all about having things be fun and easy, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not going to
I
struggle with
yeah.
something that is just, yeah.
And it is timing. It really is. I can't say anything. It is your manager is exactly right.
Mhm.
If he wasn't ready a year ago, if she would have showed up a year ago, as he said, he would have never, maybe not even noticed her
Yeah.
or saw her in a different light. It's
Yeah.
all about being ready and doing the work to be
Mm-hmm.
ready.
Yeah.
And that's such an important thing.
Yeah. Mm. Okay. All right. You know what? We could keep talking. And
We
we
could.
seriously we need to
We
wrap up for
always
the
talk. This
day.
is nice.
Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap up for right now. But thank you so much. Thank you so much again, Dorinda, for taking the time that you did today and sharing all your wisdom and all your expertise. Do you have any last words for right now? Perhaps if you want to share anything about how people can best get in touch with you or anything else.
Oh, sure. Yes. So I'm going to end on this note. Make sure whatever you do, especially, well, anything you do, but we're talking dating today, make sure it feels right to you and make sure it's aligned in how you are feeling, especially when we're talking red flags. So yes. And my name is Dorinda Barker. You can find me over on Instagram um, at Dorinda underscore NXT connection. I mean, every morning I have my daily hype woman sessions. Come over there. If you're not feeling it, just come over. It's 15 seconds and you never know what I'm going to look like, by the way, guys, just to let you know, because it is. I wake up every morning. I make coffee, sit on my couch and do like this little hype woman session. So even the hair could be on top of my head or who knows. So but and on top of that, I do tips and everything like that. And you can catch me over on my website, www.nxtconnection.com. And for anybody who's listening, if you're over on my IG, click the link in the bio and get yourself a hype man session. I do a hype man session for anybody who schedules it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And please, for you who is listening to this or watching this interview, make sure you check the show notes because we'll be dropping all of those links in the show notes so you can be sure to connect with Dorinda. And yeah, so please do that. And until we connect next time, I wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.